Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Ground Up Podcast. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Matt Walton, and my co-host Matt Huber here to bring you another episode. We have an amazing guest today, someone we've known for a little while in the community of the Astro Flipping community. Not only does he hold himself accountable consistently by posting what his daily KPIs are when he doesn't need to, he just does it because he wants to make sure that everyone sees what he's doing consistently. He is someone who's growing fast on social media channels by constantly giving so much value through lives, through trainings on certain new software he found. He's big pioneer on the AI space as far as what you can use AI for in wholesaling to gain more deals and more traction through what you're doing there without having to be so much into your business. He also travels everywhere. A digital nomad who does his business while he's traveling around. He's going to talk a little more about this as well. But Nathan Harris, how you doing today?
Dude, I am fantastic. I am decidedly joyful.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's probably something you have to decide every single day. And how is that working out for you?
Actually, I literally wake up and I say, today is going to be a great day. And like, that's just when I wake up, it's habitual now. So, in that moment at 4 a.m. when you're like, oh man, got to go to the gym. I decide today is going to be a great day. And I say it aloud. And then I just choose to have it be a great day. And then it's a great day.
So on that note right there, then how do you handle stress and things like that come up within your business? I know it does.
Oh yeah. Well, there's always things to be stressed about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a very logical person though. Like I will still, have the neurochemical cortisol be released. Here I am being a nerd. I will still have the neurochemical cortisol be released within my body. Mm-hmm. But I've figured out ways to manage it. So looking at things from a very logical lens of like, does worrying about this get me anything? Most of the time it doesn't. That doesn't mean that I should be careless and neglect it. Yeah. But most of the time, like dwelling on it and worrying about something will not benefit me. So then look at it from an analytical point of view. Can I deal with it now? If yes, okay, deal with it now, right? If no, then don't worry about it until it's time to deal with it.
Let me ask you this question, because like firm believer in what you just said is exactly the same way I live my life as well. Now, I'll tell people that all day long, but it is one thing I've found that I think it's either something you have within yourself or something you don't. But for somebody you might be talking to or somebody might be listening that maybe hears you say that, Nathan, or hears me reinforce that, but it's not something that comes natural. Any tips you have on making that something that they can put in place in their life to make it a little bit more natural, other than just, hey, control what you can control, why focus on something you can't? Is there any tips you maybe have around that?
Oh yeah, totally. So I'm very passionate about this, and some people might not like this, but we sometimes act animalistic, right? Like back in the day, we had this like small brain, right? Our amygdala brain. It's like, imagine like we have our big new brain with our prefrontal cortex. We have our small old amygdala brain, which is like, food, shelter, reproduction, etc. Right? And sometimes we don't think, and we fall back into the habits of that amygdala brain. So a lot of humans, thinking is hard. Let's be real. Thinking is hard. It burns calories to think. Professional chess players, I've heard, burn as many calories as professional bodybuilders because of thinking. So people will often choose not to think, and then they'll operate with their animalistic brain, their amygdala brain. So it's really, you got to put your reps in, just like in the gym. And I've been working out a lot, right? So I'm putting my reps in and I'm getting muscle growth, right? But there's also mental reps. So you'll find yourself in those situations where it's like, okay, am I going to act emotionally, or am I going to overpower that emotion, use my prefrontal cortex and act logically? But your prefrontal cortex might be weak if you haven't used it that much, plain and simple. And if people are like, you're calling me stupid, well, just do more mental reps, right? Some people will be weak and they'll go to the gym and they'll get stronger. And there's nothing wrong with being weak. It's just a starting point. So if we want to overcome that giving in to those emotions, we just got to put in our mental reps.
It makes complete sense, because I see a lot of people who have a very low tolerance for any stress, anything that goes wrong, and they just shut down and they're just done. And I think when you think about it, it's like you haven't put yourself in that situation where you avoid that so much that when that pops up, anything pops up that you just go right back to avoiding it. And if you put yourself in that situation over and over again, you eventually get used to that. and you're like, all right, this is how I handle it. Now you don't revert back to that lizard brain like you're talking about. You revert back, you can put yourself back into the frontal cortex, start thinking about how to get through that.
I'm like habitual on making better decisions.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like we use that same analogy you used around the lifting weights and adding muscle. The only way you lift weights and add muscle is you first have to break the brain down, then allow it to recover, and then you gain more resistance and are able to add weight and strength over time. And to that point, Matt, I think you're exactly right. Like if you always avoid trauma, you'll never be able to grow from that said trauma. I think about that a lot as a father and a parent. And I have the ability to provide a very soft, simple life for my kids, but I also know that you grow and you strengthen from trauma. So it's like, how do you manufacture challenge when you don't have to provide your kids challenge? Is something I struggle with as well. So I think it's a great point, Matt, is sometimes people make the mistake of trying to avoid discomfort, where the reality is the discomfort is the number one thing you need to ultimately be able to challenge yourself to grow.
Oh yeah. And can I ask you guys, like, did you guys have a super comfortable upbringing? Like, was there like no problems? Because I think most entrepreneurs, they had a bit of a rocky upbringing.
Yeah, I can't sit there and say that mine was terrible by any means. A lot of people have had a lot worse than I have. I'll say that. Nothing too strenuous on that. Now, obviously, I have my issues, but I think my issues are small potatoes to everyone else's. So I can't say that I had a really, really rough upbringing.
Yeah, and I'd say for me, I think one of the common things I find, Nathan, when speaking to other entrepreneurs, is that entrepreneurs might have had something that they've had to overcome, whether it be, trauma in their childhood. And I would say, like Matt, I tend to not look at myself as a victim in any scenario. So I think if other people maybe went through the life and the childhood I did, they might view it in a different way than I do. But at the same time, what I've found is a common thing that other entrepreneurs have is that they all never felt comfortable in the standard system, right? They never felt comfortable in the middle school days, the high school days. They didn't see college as the only option. And when they went to the corporate world, they kind of struggled having a boss and being told what to do. And I think that is one of the common things that as we interview people and we talk to them about kind of their ground up foundation, that's one of the most common things I've found is not that they had a bad upbringing. Actually, half the people we've interviewed had fantastic upbringings. The other half had bad, but the common is they never felt comfortable in the pre-designed box that the general society tends to put kids in.
Yeah, that was me. I got in trouble all the time in public school. They literally, I don't know how they paid for it or like who hired it, but from grade like kindergarten to grade 3, they forced me to have an aide just to keep me from being a little disturber.
That's so funny.
Speaking of that, then that segues right into what we usually go into anyways, is tell us about a little more about 10-year-old Nathan and kind of the key points in your life that got you to where you are from, elementary school, middle school, high school, and then up to where you are now.
Whew, that's a long story. That's like 4 or 5 hours. Like we could do a whole
let's hit the highlights.
Yeah. I was always a little disturber. You can fill in the word that comes before that. And yeah, I just never wanted to listen. I had behavioral issues as a kid, and for anybody that's listening to this, I'm doing air quotes. They labeled it as behavioral issues. I labeled it as I wasn't interested and wanted to do my own thing. So public school was kind of challenging. They claimed that I had a learning disability when really I just was not interested. Then come high school, I did bounce around a lot as a kid. I started with my mom, and then I went to my dad, and then I joined foster care. And then I was put in foster care. And then I signed myself out of foster care at 16, but high school was a bit of a rocky patch, from hanging out with like the wrong crowd and finding myself, kind of trapped in that crowd. And then watching, all these, it started off good. It started off as like, oh, this is fun, right? We're being reckless. We're, doing things that we're not allowed to do. And then it's like, we started to suffer all the consequences. So like all my friends started suffering the consequences. And I was like, so lucky. Like I had a horseshoe up my rear end, and I just dodged all these bullets. And then I was like watching my friends, like all, suffer the repercussions of the criminalist behavior. And I'm like, nope. Don't want to be next. So I got myself out of that, and I like ran away and hid. I went to a different city and disconnected from all those people. And then I always did construction on and off with my grandfather. So like I fell back on doing construction. Um, Man, I'm trying to give you the cliff notes, but there's so much like crazy stuff in between.
Well, let me ask you this, because there's one thing that kind of jumps out at me at what you said. You said a lot of the people you surround yourself with kind of got into a little bit of the criminal element, and you saw that, and that kind of, you made the decision at that point at a crossroads probably in your life is I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to go down that route. So you took the approach that I think probably so many often weaker men would take, and you went the other direction. You use that as a thing that you said, hey, this is what I don't want. So like when you asked me about how my childhood was, I think and overall it was fine. What I did see in my life is I saw a lot of instability. My mother got married multiple times and divorced. My father got married multiple times and divorced. But that caused me to see something I did not want in my future and go seek something I did want in my future. And for you, looks like you saw that people you were surrounding yourself with not becoming the people you wanted to be, and you use it as motivation to go the other direction. Maybe dig into that a little bit more for people that might have gone through that, or maybe some of our younger crowd who's maybe in a position where they're using their trauma to go in the direction they don't want to go instead of seeing that trauma and going in an alternative direction to create a better life for themselves.
Yeah, this story will get really dark really quickly. Is that
should I
open it up? So when I joined foster care, it was a week before my 14th birthday, and I get in foster care. The first place that I went into was a group home, which is like essentially like almost like a prison for kids, but not quite. The first night I get there, got the crap beaten out of me. Just didn't even know why. They just came in my room, beat me up, didn't even say hi. So like that set the foundation for this toxic environment that I was in during my teenage years. And then I managed to get into a foster home, which is a little bit safer than a group home. But I got into this foster home, and it was in a neighborhood that was like full of low income people, and people that, engage in criminalist activity. And I have always been an entrepreneur as a kid, right? Like I would sell pop out of my locker as a kid. I would, I had a Visa debit card, and I buy kids things online and then upcharge them to give it to them in person, all kinds of stuff like that. So I find myself in foster care in a neighborhood with a demographic of people that have a heavy demand for illicit substances. So 14 years old, somebody says, hey, you want to try weed and whatnot? Like I start trying it, I'm smoking weed, and then I'm breaking it up with my friends. So I'm grabbing like an ounce and, realizing like, oh, I can get 8 free grams if I just, bring this to them. And that suddenly turned into a really big business. Right. And I was making a good amount of profit. And then I found myself trapped after a little bit, because I was in a very dangerous environment, where it was like, dog eat dog world, and people would prey on other people. So like I had a group of people surrounding me because I had a very valuable product. It was a very valuable chess piece on the chessboard. So people wanted to protect me. But it was like, as soon as I would stop having that product, I became vulnerable for attacks. So it went from like marijuana to, like lot worse stuff. And it was all fun. It was all fun and games at first. Right. It was all fun and games with selling weed. And then it turned into like, ecstasy. And I started giving them away because like we were making so much money. And I was young at the time. I was a teenager. I was misunderstood. I didn't understand the repercussions of drugs, but I was giving them away like crazy. Everybody was having a really great time. Everybody loved me. They're like, Nathan, he's the life of the party. I'm like, I had all this money. I was like throwing parties and whatnot. And just everybody was really happy. And then 2 months later, and this is where it all goes to shit. So 2 months later, they started dropping, right? There was this one kid that was studying to become a police officer, and it went from marijuana to cocaine to ecstasy to Xanax. And then he rolls his car and he breaks into somebody's house and goes to clean himself, like just out of his mind on drugs that was supplied by me. And I feel terrible saying that. I feel so bad for all of this. And this kind of, I'll explain what I'm doing to remedy it in the future. But he broke into somebody's house and he got arrested, and like, boom, his future is tarnished, right? There was another girl. her mom called me. I'm a 16-year-old kid, right? And her mom calls me and says, my daughter slit her wrist in a bathtub because she was on a come down from what you gave her. And I was like, fuck. Mm-hmm. Like I didn't realize this. Like no drug dealer tells you like, right. Hey, 2 months from now, all these terrible things are going to happen. And I gave like all my friends this, right? I was handing them out like candy. So they started dropping like flies. I had a friend, that got robbed. And unfortunately in the robbery, a kid died, and it was getting really bad. So I was like, I've dodged so many bullets. I'm glad I'm alive. I'm glad, I myself did not get consumed by the drugs and, damage my future. I'm so sorry for everybody that like I hurt. I didn't know. And I smashed my phone and I hid, and like, I was like, I gotta be out. And that was such an emotional experience that hurt me so much going through that, it is such a big goal of mine to help young men get their life together, right? To give young men a good, fulfilling purpose that is productive. So, I was young and I was an entrepreneur, but I was pointed in the wrong direction, in a very bad pathway. So my goal is to just like help as many young men that have these ambitions be pointed in a very positive pathway and give them the framework, which, wholesaling real estate is my framework, so that they can generate income and so that they can have like a healthy lifestyle and avoid, ever touching that negative aspect.
So let me ask you this question. You mentioned something earlier, and this kind of might maybe kind of transition into another topic I know we wanted to talk about. You mentioned that there was a period in your life where you were in foster care, group home care, and stuff of that nature. Now, I know that now you as an adult, one of the things you're very passionate about, we were talking about this before we hit the record button, which was how much traveling you're doing and how much moving around. And I think I think you said something like the series that you have coming out where you kind of highlight this and document it. Do you think that background tied to your nomadic way in today, and that you kind of that not necessarily needing or wanting a foundational home to sit at, like having the comfort of being able to move around and travel so much? Do you think that those two things connect? It seems like you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I for the longest time, I was like super against having more belongings than my vehicle could carry. Now I've accumulated more belongings than my vehicle can carry, but I am the kind of person where I can take my laptop and leave everything behind. I'm more than comfortable with that. And I think it also stems from just knowing and having confidence in my personal ability to generate income, that I can leave everything behind because I can always replace everything, right? Even if I'm low on cash this month, give me like 1, 2, 3 months and, I'll figure out a way to replace it. But yeah, definitely, not really comfortable with being locked in one place. And I think that's because of throughout my childhood, constantly moving. Even before foster care, we were constantly moving.
Yeah.
So tell me about what you have going on here. You already mentioned a little bit about how you're going to help out these young men in bad situations and everything, but you have season 2 of something you're coming up with. So tell us a little about that.
Yeah. So first of all, I'll give you guys context for season 1. So season 1, it was really funny. I just started live streaming, and I thought to myself, I'm like, okay, wholesale real estate might be a scam. So let's live stream my journey. And if it is, then I live streamed it and I showed people that I gave it a good fair shot. And, if it didn't work out, then, we could blame it on it's not legit. Turns out it's not a scam. Turns out it works, and it works very well. So I got to show people me building an entire business from scratch. But now I find myself in an interesting position where I've learned how to make money. I've learned how to wholesale real estate, but I'm trapped in my business, right? Like when I went to Asia, and it was 12 hours time difference, and like, the middle of the night there was daytime here. My business suffered a little bit because I was the business. So season 2 is going to be really interesting. It's not just going to be me traveling the world and wholesaling real estate from around the world, but it's going to be me building the business as its own entity, right? Because right now it's Nathan, right? It's Nathan is a wholesaler. Nathan makes money around the world. But now I'm, building an actual business where it's like, I'm going to have teams of people calling, establishing an entire media production team for like my content and whatnot. it's going to be really cool. My goal is $2 million in revenue for 2025. So yeah, I'm freaking excited. We're going to do some awesome stuff. Like some places that I want to hit in this series is like Germany and like racing cars on the Autobahn, which is a highway with no speed limit. Dubai. I do want to go back to Asia. That'll be really cool. And yeah, just like really inspire young men through showing them the lifestyle that's available to them. And then not just inspire, but also educate through letting them see me build this entire business.
I'm going to need you to, and you're not going to be driving during this. Somebody else is going to be driving, but I need you to sign a contract, sitting in the passenger seat going 100 miles an hour on the Autobahn.
Yo, that would be hilarious.
Yeah,
that would be so hilarious.
Yeah, don't drive. Don't be the one driving, please.
Well, I'll take a Tesla. That way it drives for me.
There you go.
Put even on better. Autopilot.
Awesome. So tell me about your plans, because you obviously have plans to build the business here, and me, same with me. And so I've been wholesaling for the past almost 3 years, and I'll be 3 years in February. Me and my wife run the business, and we have a team of people right now. We have an ACK, a Dispo, Comper. We have a guy who runs our CRM, and then we have another VA that's opened up a new market over in North Carolina with us. We do most of our business, all of our business, really in Virginia right now. We're opening up North Carolina to expand. So we're in the process of expanding and trying to grow this business. So tell me about your plans here and how you plan to grow this business, especially while you're traveling.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of the book Traction?
Yes. Love that book.
It's called Traction. Get a grip on your business is what it's called for the people that are listening. Right now, I feel like I don't have a grip on my business. Right now, if I disappear for 7 days, it's gonna damage company morale. I'm going to miss out on a lot of deals. I'm going to have like 1,000 messages in my inbox. Like it will be crazy if I disappear for 7 days.
Yeah.
So over the month of December, which is we're recording right now in December, I'm implementing this entire book of Traction. So because December is a slow month, not as many agents are picking up, not as many buyers are buying anymore. This is the prime time for me to set myself up for success in 2025. So number one, I have to get extreme clarity on my vision, and I need to be able to communicate that to my team. I need my entire team very clear on the vision. Number two, I need to have like properly documented SOPs in place, because right now it is such a pain for me to hire and replace people because it requires my immediate presence to train them and whatnot. And then also to delegate more. So like I hired an executive assistant, which is like, oh my goodness, that's such a relief. And we're still figuring it out as we go, because I'm only like partway through the Traction book.
That's all right. I mean, you're going to be live streaming it all, so we're going to see it as it happens. Yeah. Right.
And I'm also live streaming me like implementing this Traction book. I just popped up a quick and dirty live, and I called it like Quantum Jumps. The process of building $1 million business or something like that. Just because I want to show everything, right? Obviously, I can't show like everything, because otherwise I'd be live streaming 24/7 and you'd see me picking my nose sometimes. But I want to show as much as possible.
So I know like you put something, and I know you're passionate about this because I see you post on it constantly, and it's super motivating too. So I see two things you're very passionate about. Also, is one is being in the gym and getting yourself healthy. I know that. I want you to talk a little bit about how that ties into being an entrepreneur. And then also you talk a lot about meditation. You talk a lot about like deep meditation in order to, and there's more things you go into about that. I want to know a little bit more about how you use that into your business also as an entrepreneur.
Okay. So we all know what a wheel looks like, right? So imagine a wheel with 5 spigots, I guess we'd call it, right? 5 pillars to that wheel. But if one of those spigots are, not all the way extent, if it's not all equal, it's going to be a bumpy ride. Yep. So we have like financial wealth, we have physical wealth, we have emotional wealth, we have spiritual wealth. There's all kinds of wealth, right? So imagine this. Imagine you make a lot of money, but you're like incredibly like obese and just, you can't walk up the stairs. You're winded. You're at risk of like heart attacks. That person's not wealthy. They can have a lot of money, but they're not wealthy, right? And that sucks. So I've recently discovered that there are so many more forms of wealth, from like relationship wealth, financial wealth, of course, physical wealth, spiritual wealth, all that stuff. So I'm trying to get balance in all of those places. I love the spirituality aspect of it, because I think spirituality contributes to everything, especially financial, because financial is really all mental. You and I both have the same amount of hours in a day. As long as you weren't born without arms, then we pretty much are cut from the same cloth and have equal ability. And yeah, physical wealth, I think it's so incredibly important to be physically wealthy, because at least from my perspective, if someone is, giving me advice, I'm going to look at, I'm going to look at the shape of their body, right? And I'm going to say, like, is this person like physically healthy, right? Because if they're physically healthy, that's going to tell me, number one, that they're disciplined. Number two, they have results that I want. They're healthy, versus like, if I'm taking advice from somebody that like is not physically healthy, I'm like, I don't want that result. And I say that in a loving way.
Yeah, I saw you put a post about that. I think you got a lot of comments on that post.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I say controversial stuff, but it boosts engagement. But yeah, like genuinely, I love humans. I want every single human to be like their healthiest physically, their healthiest spiritually, their healthiest with relationship, financial health. And I think it's our duty. I think it's our duty as humans to live out our truest potential. Because imagine this, Matt. Let's say Nathan was fully capable of accomplishing all the things he wants to accomplish in the world, of, building like billion-dollar businesses and contributing massively to humanity, helping and serving so many people, right? Imagine that. But Nathan is lazy and he chooses not to. He chooses to eat a bag of chips and watch Netflix and just be a vegetable on his couch. How much am I hurting humanity by doing that? Massively. And I apologize if this is a little polarizing, but in my opinion, in the way that I view it, is I would cause more harm to humanity than Hitler did by me not fulfilling my true potential.
Yeah. Hopefully you don't compare yourself to Hitler, but yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I saw a podcast the other day that said, where the most $1 million ideas are right now in the world. Where they are? And the guy said no, and he said they're in the cemetery.
Oh.
And he was like, there's so many $1 million ideas that people had that either they didn't know how or they were scared to implement those ideas. And I thought that was just such a great, perspective on everybody has that $1 million idea, but so few people are scared to do it. If we go back to what you were talking about in regards to the marriage around being elite at your spiritual side, your physical side, your health side, your business side, I could tell you that my experience, and I would assume most people are like this, is that when I'm locked in with my walk with my religion, it makes me do everything else better. When I'm locked in with my diet and my fitness plan, and I wake up every morning at 6:30 and I knock that part out, man, it makes me do everything else better the rest of the day. I'm a firm believer in that old adage that look good, feel good, do better. The better I feel, the better I work, the harder I work, the more swagger I have, and especially if you come from an area and industry like I do with a background in sales, man, sales is very, very heavily weighted on confidence. And if you're unable to display confidence and have something to be confident about, it's going to affect every other side of your life. And those times where I fell off the wagon in regards to my fitness plan or my diet or wasn't as involved into church, man, all the other things in my life had a fallout outside of those things as well, because, at the end of the day, you need to have that foundational structure. And for me, I think that it comes back to, for me, it's faith, family, fitness, and finances. And those things all, when working together and in unison, will lift every other part of those out. Any thoughts on that, Nathan?
Dude, it's just like the wheel. Like, I totally agree with you. And just like a wheel, if you have 5 parts to that wheel, if one part of it, let's say, your fitness is bad, it's going to be a bumpy ride, right? If let's say your finances are bad, it's going to be hard for you to focus on your physical health if your finances are bad, because your mind's going to be so caught up on like, how do I eat tomorrow? If your spirituality is bad, you're going to have a hard time with, in my opinion, pretty much everything else, because just spirituality is like the start of just being positive with your mindset.
Let me add this to it too, and maybe I'd love to get your perspective on this. Some people here aren't spiritual. Some people that are listening don't believe in God or don't believe in any higher power past that. But I still think there's value in kind of marrying the idea of praying and meditation around the same general thing. If you are intentional with what you're thinking through within your life and what you're going through, the goods and the bads, you take time, sit down, digest your day, digest your goals, and then you sit there and are intentional around being in a quiet place where you're focusing on those things. I think that at the end of the day, most people will get the similar results. So for people that aren't spiritual or aren't religious or don't believe in the value of prayer, I would suggest that you alternatively take that same process, call it meditation. The results and the outcome of that will likely be very similar, which is just be intentional with that. About a year ago, I had a client of mine that I was working with that had everybody he worked with do this 4G process, and every day you sat down and you had to think of 10 things you're grateful for. And the first couple of days, it was easy to do, right? You're very surface level, very high level. You go, I'm thankful for my wife, I'm thankful for my kids, those types of things. But as you go every single day, you have to be significantly more intentional in regards to thinking what you're grateful for. And then one of the things that I learned in that process was, instead of waiting until the morning when I sit down at my desk to write those 10 things I'm grateful for down, if you focusing on those 10 things you're grateful for throughout the day, being cognizant of when you have something to be thankful for, jotting it down, put it on your notepad. So then in the morning, when you are compiling that list of 10 things you're grateful for, you have that list. But by doing it throughout the day, you find yourself significantly more grateful in regards to what you have and what you're doing. It's just a different framing of the same aspect. But a lot of what I hear you say, Nathan, is what you are is you're just intentional about everything that you do, whether it is intentional about why you're doing what you do within your business, why you spend the time on yourself, whether it be through spirituality or whether it be through your health journey. There's a lot of intention behind everything you do. So is that something that you're cognizant of, as being so intentional, or is it just something that comes natural to you?
Interesting. Yes. First of all, I agree. I'm very intentional, but this makes me think about this thing that I saw on social media. And it pretty much said, we spend time is almost, I don't know how I said it exactly, but it pretty much said that, imagine time like money, right? Like it's, you have a certain amount of money in your bank, but the thing is with time is we never really know how much our balance is, right? I could die tomorrow. We don't know. It could be 150 years from now as well. With the advancements in technology, might be 150 years, might be tomorrow. So why would I just drift through life? I am here. I have this great opportunity. I have in my opinion, I have infinite resources available to me. I just have to think of a way to utilize and direct the flow of resources towards creating what I want in life. And, as we heard before about my past, I caused a lot of harmship in my childhood. And, it started off with just having fun. And for a little bit, it was kind of I knew what I was doing and I was feeling guilty. And then finally I was no, I got to stop. And now it's okay, I got to cause such good to humanity. And I gotta right that wrong, a millionfold. So I am very intentional with my actions. I am very intentional with my days, how I spend it. I'm very intentional with my thoughts. And, earlier we were talking about spirituality, and some people are oh, I'm not spiritual, right? Well, I'd like to ask them a question of, do you think that your thoughts have any impact on your life? Do you think that your thoughts have an impact on your life, right? Because if you agree with that your thoughts have an impact on your life, I would argue that you're spiritual, right? I might not have a specific God that I believe in, and I won't disclose that to everybody. But at the end of the day, just thinking that your thoughts have an impact on your life will make you spiritual, in my opinion. You're directing and controlling your thoughts, which then control your feelings, which then control your actions, and your actions control your results, and your results cause new thoughts. So if you believe in manifestation, you're spiritual, right? You believe that, changing your thoughts can change your feelings, can change your actions, and therefore change your life. If you believe in prayer, right? That's manifestation as well. I think we all just label them differently. But at the end of the day, like these are like core principles of the universe, in my opinion.
Yeah, but it's hard. It's hard to say that there's nothing out there at the same time. And obviously, we're not going to have a religious conversation with what's right or wrong. But it's hard to say there's nothing out there when you, like you said, Matt, as in like you think grateful things throughout the day. Like you find more things to be grateful for. If you think negative things throughout the day, you find more things to be negative about. If you go about life with a negative outlook, bad things just happen to you. Like it just happens over and over again. There's somebody I know in my life where he had passed away, but he constantly was just negative about a lot of different things. And he'd be the guy that you're walking through a yard together. He would step in a hole and hurt his ankle. He'd be the guy like you would order at the restaurant and his food would be wrong when all yours are right. You know, it's like things like that would constantly happen. I just noticed that as we go through the day, like you're always mad about something or negative about something. And that just always happens to you. And the more of these podcasts that we have and the more we talk to people, it's crazy to see like how much life boils down to a decision, like on which way you could go and how you think about it. There's so many like moments that come in your life that you're like, you have two ways to think about this, and you can either think the wrong way and think negative about it and move yourself to a lower level, or you can just choose to move yourself to a more positive side. And sometimes it's a harder route, but it's crazy. The more conversation we have about that, the more I see that happening.
I mean, just look at how many people are like, I look at sick people, right? And they're sick physically. And most of the time, you know, it stems from their thoughts. Most of the time they're encumbered by negative thoughts. I've even seen people where they've started, you know, kind of like fine, and then they start choosing to think negatively, and then next thing you know, they have all these health issues, and then the health issues cause them to think even more negatively, and then they have more health issues. And we could go into the science about it of like, you know, cortisol puts you in fight or flight mode, which then, you know, takes all the energy, fixing the body, and you know, you're constantly just like diminishing the quality of your body. But yeah, thoughts have a direct impact, and it's not necessarily our actions, you know, that put us in a positive place in life or a negative place in life. Let's boil it back a layer. It's our thoughts that cause those actions.
Absolutely.
You know, a couple of things that come to me when we talk about that. So we talk about our thoughts and the surrounding of our thoughts, but I also would attach that to the people that we surround ourselves with as well. And when you put yourself in a crowd of other people that you aspire to be versus where you're the person that everybody else is aspiring to be. I've had a lot of self-reflection over this past week. I was lucky to have a lunch with a good friend of mine. Or it was more of a coffee breakfast. The good friend of mine this past Friday, and he asked me that question. He said, "Hey, Matt, in your life, in your personal life, do you find yourself spending the majority of the time with people that look up to you and what you are more, or do you spend yourself in a community where you are looking up to other people?" And it really, really made me self-reflect in regards to what my day, the people I interact with, the people I spend time with. What part of the people do I look up to? What part of the people look up to me, or people, and what part of the people that I look up to do I look up to? Do I look up to them as husbands, as fathers, as spiritual leaders? Do I look up to them in what they do in business? And there's obviously a lot of different places we can aspire to be and aspire to grow. Outside of business, Nathan, what's the number one thing you would look for in a community to surround yourself with? You know, it can be business, it could be outside of business. What's most important for you to look at right now?
I love communities. Most important thing is mindset, because that's the foundation for everything, right? You know, and I pay a lot of money to join these communities. I've joined some communities where, you know, their number one thing is strategy. And I've joined other communities where their number one thing is mindset. And I find that the communities where their number one thing is mindset are more sustainable in their growth, are leaner in their results. So meaning, you know, maybe less people, but make a lot more money. So yeah, like even for example, on the flip side of it, of like me like building my own community, because I have built a community. I think we're at 700 people in our Discord now. And it's primarily targeting, you know, young men that are a little bit lost, you know, looking for direction, looking for mentorship, extreme accountability. We built it on a very, very strong foundation of mindset. That's, you know, meditation, that's breath work, that's, you know, no BS. So like, we don't have it outlined on paper. We kind of have like a code of conduct where like, if let's say for example, Matt was in my community, right? And Matt made an excuse, right? Matt did something wrong and he made an excuse. It is everybody else's moral duty to very politely call Matt out on that. Because at the end of the day, what we care more about is the results for our brothers and our sisters than, Matt's feelings.
Yeah, we don't care about Matt's feelings here either. So it's all good.
No, I mean, that's a big part of this entrepreneur in general. It's that we hear people in the wholesale space, they come up with a lot of different excuses all the time, right? Like, oh, my market sucks, market's tough, there's too much competition, there's not enough competition. There's when I'm getting these phone calls, they don't like the way I sound, I'm not saying the right things. It's always just constant. You can just come up with every excuse in the world about why you're not successful. And what separates the success people from you is literally just that. It's just that they don't make the excuses like that. I know that, and tell me how you think about this also, Nathan, is when you're going through stuff and something happens, do you automatically find out what you could have done better? Or do you automatically look at like somebody else should have done something else different?
Totally. The other day, I had this issue, right? So a very reputable wholesaler brought me a buyer on one of my deals, and it was my fault, and you could say that it was his fault, you could say that it was the TC's fault, but at the end of the day, we just want results and we don't want it to happen again. So I gave out the lockbox code to a couple of wholesalers, and turns out somebody stole a TV from the property. So the seller threw a fit. And I don't blame them for being upset. They threw a fit, and like they called the police and they were going to do an investigation. I'm like, oh no, like this is going to be like, this is like the STD conversation. Like, I do not want to have to call these wholesalers and say, hey, tell me everybody that you sent the lockbox code to. So we were able to get the seller to chillax just by, the agent agreed to pay him out. There was like no assignment fee on this one. So I said to the agent, I'm like, look, there's no money in this. I can't pay him. I'm sorry. But the agent paid the seller to keep him from like going forward with the investigation. And anyways, we assigned the deal, and then this very reputable wholesaler, his buyer just suddenly shows up to the property, right? And he's trying to get in. And his buyer doesn't contact the dispo wholesaler that brought me the buyer, doesn't contact the TC, doesn't contact me. He calls the agent, right? and the agent gets all freaked out because like a TV got stolen from the property, and now this dude's trying to get in there. And at first I was a little bit like, I had the neurochemicals go out in my brain of like anger and whatnot, like, why the heck? You should be better with your buyers. You should have communicated to them. And I sent a message. I'm like, this is really dumb. This shouldn't happen. And then I like caught myself, and I'm like, and over text message, I'm like, no, where did this go wrong? Right. Well, I should have communicated clearly to the TC the sensitivity of this issue, so that the TC could communicate clearly to the buyer that the sensitivity of this issue.
Yeah, so you're going through that, and you're like, everyone, it seems like as long as you're good, you're taking blame for it on yourself. Like, hey, this is something I could have done better, instead of just pointing fingers at everybody else. Because it goes back to negative people and how you think about stuff. It's easy to point fingers at everybody else and say it's your fault, you should have done better, and never look at yourself in the mirror and say, if I would have done this, it could have been a little bit better. Now, I'm not saying that you do everything wrong, that you're
no control.
Yeah.
If we blame other people, we have no control.
You're right.
Right. If I say, yo, it's the TC's fault, it's John's fault, it's whoever's fault.
Yeah.
I now have no control. I'm now just a leaf in the wind.
Absolutely.
So as a coach, that's something I spend a lot of time with some of my more entry level people, and even the companies that I consult with. And I consistently will ask them, what can you do differently to get a better result? And I want people to focus at the internal side of that question, not the external side, right? So often, let's say we've got a VA that works with a client and they're not getting the results that we expect them to get. And we're like, okay, perfect. What can you do better to get a better result? And we're like, well, it's the market's fault, or it's this fault, or it's the client's not doing this for me or that. And I'm like, cool. Can you change those things by complaining about them? No. So what can we change that's within inside of our control to help get a better result? Can we approach our day in a better way? Can we make our calls with more confidence? Can we be more prepared? Should we focus on quality or quantity? What can you do within your control to effectively change the outcome? Focusing on everything else that is not you is just creating an excuse for you on why you're not successful instead of finding a solution in a way to be successful. So that's a big thing I focus with people on. As you consult with your people, I love the idea that you, in your network, you say that like, we just like say the real thing. We call somebody out. We don't let them fall into those mistakes. Do you find most people that are in your community like that? Or are there a lot of people that struggle with that real talk?
So I think it's important that we have the majority of people with the positive mindset. We got to be careful on our ratios, because if we do a large influx of new people, that can disturb the overall culture. Most of the time, new people will come in and they'll make their excuses, and they'll be called out on their excuses in a very loving, results oriented way, of course. And they'll adapt, and then they'll change their mindset, and they'll click, and they'll be one of the group. And continue to, push that positive, loving, results focused mindset. Every now and then we'll get somebody that is a little too stuck in their ways. We'll get somebody with a victim mentality, and usually they'll just let themselves out.
Yeah,
I don't even really have to school them or anything. They'll just be, given this like positive, shell shock by our members. And then they're like, I don't want to show up, and they don't show up again.
Nathan, we're gonna pop into another segment over here now, where we kind of, what we do is here we ask you questions for rapid fire answers, and obviously we're kind of loose on that. You don't have to be as quick as you need to be, but where we're just gonna ask you some questions here, and just one back to back to kind of wrap up the segment of what we're doing over here, in order to help you to get more tips out there, tricks, and how to help stuff out, more clips in front of your audience and people you're reaching out to, because I know you're constantly trying to grow your social media presence. So we want to help you out for coming on this and helping us out. So we're going to kind of jump into those questions now, if you're okay with that.
Let's do it.
Awesome. All right. So give me 3 ways that someone can start working on a better mindset.
Number 1, observation. You got to think about your thoughts. You got to observe what's going through your head. If you don't think about your thoughts, you're just, mindlessly sleepwalking through life. Number 2, I would say you got to start killing ants. And what I mean by that is killing automatic negative thoughts. So automatic negative thought, as soon as that automatic negative thought comes up, crush it, take away the power. That's not true. That's no longer me. I am insert new empowering thought. And number 3, environment. If you are surrounded by, if you want to fly with the eagles, you can't cluck with the turkeys. If you want to fly with the eagles, you can't cluck with the turkeys. So if you want to surround yourself with losers, you're going to have a harder time flying with the eagles. You're going to have a harder time being a winner.
So you mentioned earlier that you were looking to build your team. If we had a magic wand and we could solve a problem for you in regards to staffing, what is your number 1 staffing need that you need help with right now that you would love somebody just to solve for you?
I feel like my pathway is going to come to fruition. I feel like it's just a timeline thing. What I want, it's not as much about like, do I just want bums in the seats? I want to make an impact on people's lives. So though I could, go hire virtual assistants and be like, all right, guys, pound this list. What I want is I want to change so many young men's lives, right? So I'm doing a boot camp come the first week of January. I'm doing a boot camp where I'm going to get people going, and I'm going to pick the top players from that boot camp to join my team and continue with closer mentoring and, tap into my resources. Because at the end of the day, I want to help people. And I also like helping Americans a lot because, I am a Canadian, but Americans are my friends. So I want like at least 10 of them come January. But, expand to like thousands, come like 3 years from now. That'd be really cool. Have thousands of young men where we're providing them an opportunity for them to make more money than they could have ever imagined, give them their freedom, and, just like put them in a position where they can help and inspire other young men.
So, but just to be clear, the answer to the question on this one would be wanting to fill a role, whether it's an outside source doing it or your team doing it, filling a role as an additional person to help acquisition on the wholesale side of the business. That's the biggest, the role within your business that you want to fill next as you scale your business, right?
Yes, I want a team of acquisitions wholesalers, power dialing MLS leads, building relationships, and just, causing a big problem on the dispo side for me to solve so that I can solve that problem and make lots of money.
So what are your 3 tips for starting out as a wholesaler?
Ingrain this in your mind, people. Ingrain this in your mind. Persistence is my insurance policy against failure. The cost is showing up every day and making incremental improvements. I'm going to say that one more time. Persistence is my insurance policy against failure. The cost is showing up every day and making incremental improvements. That's tip number 1. Just keep going. Don't give up. Too many people get in and they give up after like 2-3 months. And I feel really sad seeing them give up, because if they just stayed through with it, they could have had a whole different life. And then tip number 2 for people getting started in wholesale real estate is, I think you got to be very results driven, right? Like at first I was like, oh, make the calls just so I can check the box and say that I hit my amount of calls, right? But what is the end goal? What is the objective? Be very results driven. And then I could come up with a number 3, but I feel like number 1 and 2 are enough to suffice.
Awesome.
I agree. So Matt mentioned earlier that you do this thing where you throw out your KPIs every day for like your own kind of like personal accountability coach. As a wholesaler, if there's number 1 KPI that somebody should track and manage, is there one above all that stands out to you as the most important KPI to take to look at as a wholesaler?
No, there actually isn't just one. And the reason why there isn't just one is because there's many steps to this, right? You got to call, you got to make offers, you got to follow up, you got to put properties under contract, you got to send them to your buyers, you got to sell them, you got to close them. So there isn't really just one, but tracking your KPIs is like so important, because so many people come to me like, 2-3 months in, and they're like, Nathan, I haven't gotten a deal yet. I'm really discouraged. I'm like, show me your KPIs. KPIs? And if you're not tracking your KPIs, you don't know if you're doing the right thing, the wrong thing, or if you're simply just not doing anything. I know myself, when I got started, I was maybe working like 3 hours a day, right? And like, I was like, oh yeah, I'm working so hard. Really? I was only working like 3 hours a day. I was not getting much done. Once I started tracking my KPIs, I'm like, oh really? Like that 8 hours of work and I only got this done. Like, obviously I'm, dicking around here.
So what are the KPIs that you've been tracked? Like, if none of them stand out to you as the most important, what are the ones that you track? So I mean, we keep track of, we obviously provide acquisition specialists for a variety of clients, right? It's one of the parts of our business that we do. And there's certain things that we measure and we keep track of every single day. For an acquisition specialist, I think we've identified the most important metric. If we identify one, is how many offers you're putting out. If you're an acquisition, there's a lot of different steps you got to get to the point where you can make an offer, but ultimately putting out anywhere from 3 to 5 plus offers a day is the number 1 metric we try to track. What metrics are important for you to look at every day? If you were to meet with somebody asking you, how am I doing? How can I do better? What numbers are you looking for them to be able to show you?
Yeah. So at least what I track is MLS listings called, agent conversations, written offers made. And there's like a majority of them, but I'm just going to tell you like the big ones. And then, PSAs signed, PSAs closed, deals blasted, buyer conversations, added buyers, all of those. And yeah, you are right. Offers made is really, really important. But if you're too focused on just offers made, then, what about offers closed? Like what's our end goal? PSAs closed. So hence why, like, I do agree with you. Offers made is probably like, the one that like is best to communicate to people just starting out. But in my opinion, like, I'm very focused on like end goal, purchase and sale agreements closed. Right. Mm-hmm. So I think all of those come with importance that are before the purchase and sale agreement closed.
Yeah, I think one thing I'm starting to notice more and more of, maybe I just did it just when I was doing it without a team and everything. One thing I'm noticing more and more of is the quality of your offers also. How are you giving these offers necessarily, and how are you communicating your offers to the agents or sellers or whatever that you're doing? I think that's important, because a lot of times you can throw out numbers. You can just say, here's my number. And then just like, that's, not giving any context. And a lot of times what I like to do is I get on the phone with them and I say, hey, look, based off this, based off the ARV, what I'm seeing on these properties and stuff, based off the amount of work that we have with this, and this is how much I need to buy this property at. So I want them to get on my side with that. When I give them the offer, I want them to, the agent or seller, to say like, I understand that. I see what you're seeing. I get it. And they go back and I have a better chance at that offer because of that. So are you seeing the same thing in your business with those?
I totally agree. There's people that are using like automatic offer softwares where like it just takes the list price, whatever percentage of the list price, and then boom, fire it off. And they're like, I made, ridiculous amount of offers today.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but how many of those are actually deals?
Yeah.
Right. How many of those did you actually speak to the agent on? Like how many of those are the agent actually going to call you back on? Mm-hmm. Which comes back to like me being like super results driven is, I'd rather take the MAT method because the MAT method is more lean. You're going to end up with more closings that way.
I agree. I think we're seeing that more and more in the business. So you use a lot of AI stuff. Tell us a few ways that you use AI within your business.
I built this AI buyer bot that will pre-vet buyers on autopilot. So I guess I can't say last week anymore because it was a little over last week. But within the past 10 days, I did this live stream where my challenge was to add 100 buyers in a day. I ended up only adding, I think like 88 buyers that day. But I used artificial intelligence. I used a chatbot that reaches out to buyers, pretends to be me, replicates my personality, my personal characteristics, and collects their buying criteria. And it was really, really cool. So that's the number one way. I also built some other bots, but like the acquisitions AI bot is cool. It does pretty much the same thing where it reaches out to agents, builds a relationship, and requests them to send pocket listings. But I don't use it all that much. And the reason why is because I love MLS offers because it's like money now plus a relationship for money later. Mm-hmm. So like I've pretty much already talked to almost all the agents that are actually selling fixer-uppers, just with the sheer quantity of MLS offers that I do. So it almost isn't necessary for me to use, but other people will use that bot. I give my bots away for free. Other people will use that bot and pre-vet leads on autopilot. Like there was this one dude named Anthony. He was driving an 18-wheeler and he couldn't text while drive. And it's really good that he couldn't text while drive, especially while driving an 18-wheeler. So he turned on the agent outreach bot, and the agent outreach bot just started building relationships, and you got a pocket listing and boom, $8,000 wire.
That's awesome.
Let me ask you this. You mentioned earlier about traveling. I know you've got a season 2 coming up. You mentioned a couple different destinations, but let's just forecast across the rest of your life. What are your 3 bucket list destinations or things you want to do on your list before you see the last day?
I would like to establish a colony on Mars. That'll be really cool.
Okay.
I think we have all the resources, and everybody smiles like, it's big audacious goal. I truly believe in it, bro. I truly believe, because dude, look how fast we put men on the moon. Dude, all we got to do is just build a structure. We have all the resources available to us. Man, we got reusable rockets now. We got like more computing. Bro, your phone has more computing power in it than the spaceship that put men on the moon. So it's so obtainable, and I want my biggest gift to humanity to be making us a multi-planetary species and hedging our bets against extinction. So that's on my bucket list. That's like my big thing, and like all the other things are like minuscule compared to that.
I would agree with that, and we'll let Elon Musk. I know you're watching. you got somebody who's willing to get on that first ship.
Ready to go.
I DM'd him. I DM'd him like 3 years ago. I DM'd so many people. It's hilarious. It was like 3 years ago. I'm like, my goal is to build houses on Mars. Can you help me in doing so? It was like at the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. It's so corny. And like some of these people like DM me back now, and I'm like,
If you make it like super anti politics, I think you have a better chance of getting him to respond on X at this point.
Yeah.
If you just make it very political and say something like just hitting the left pretty hard, he'll probably retweet you, and now all of a sudden you'll be on his on his team. He's looking for that right now.
Like make a bunch of I'll just tell my EA, I'll be like, every single day come up with a controversial post and tag Elon Musk.
Just make sure it's against the left, because you're good to go there.
Awesome. So we have a couple more questions here, but I want to ask one more before we do our last 2 that we always do with every podcast here. Just your 3 best travel tips that you give when you're going somewhere.
Get a data sim.
A what?
A data sim. Get a SIM card for
a
data.
SIM you can take. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And don't stress. Like I don't really have like three best ones. It's just like don't stress. Like just enjoy, right? Go with the flow. There's gonna be unknowns. That's okay. Just figure it out. Enjoy it. Don't stress. Get a data sim so that you have Wi-Fi so you can navigate and enjoy. Go with the flow. I'm a very laid back guy. I don't really have like three of everything. I just have like one. Like let's see how this plays out. Yeah.
So Nathan, let me ask you this: what is your 1 year, 5 year, and 20-year goals with your business?
We know 20-year goals, Mars. Close to Mars, but
start wholesaling on Mars. Got it.
Yeah. So 1 year would be $2 million in revenue. 5 years, I have a 3-year goal, but 5 years will just be a little bit bigger than that 3-year goal. So it'll be like multiple big multifamily syndications, as well as establishing the relationships to do a syndication to build houses on Mars. And then 10-year goal is, build houses on Mars.
Yeah, wholesale houses on Mars. Why not?
Yeah, it's this traction book that's like helping me get clarity. The one that we were talking about earlier.
Awesome. Okay. And now, last question we always ask is: at the end of the day, Nathan, when Nathan is chilling on Mars, his life is coming down to an end. He wants to close his eyes. He's 150 years old. He's ready to close his eyes for the last time. What do you want your legacy to be?
I want it to be uploaded into an AI personality that can live in a robotic body and continue to live on without me.
Okay, there you go. Awesome. Well, Nathan, we're going to get your links and stuff like that too. We're going to put it on everywhere. But tell us really quick how we follow you, how we get a part of the challenge, how we get to know more about Nathan on your lives or social medias and things like that.
Yeah. So on YouTube, if you search up Nathan Harris, REI, you'll find me. It's the astronaut picture. On Instagram, it's nathan.w.k.harris. And on Facebook, it's just Nathan Harris. So you'll catch the most content on Facebook as well as YouTube, and then Instagram following behind. Regarding the challenge, just link in bio. We're going to start running ads for it soon as well.
Awesome. And we'll get the link for your Discord channel too if anybody wants to join that and be a part of that great community you guys have. For anybody listening, thank you so much for joining this. Thank you so much for giving us our time. Please, if you've got any value out of this, I know that me and Matt did, please like, subscribe, comment, alert, all the different things you can share, all the different things you can do on social media. Please do all of it. Help us out here and get Nathan's name out there as much as you can. But Nathan, thank you so much again for being on this podcast.
Thank you as well.
Thank you, Nathan.